recorded in the beautiful mountains of British Columbia. Welcome to
Friends on Horses.
Well, welcome back to Friends on Horses. Today we're really excited to welcome Kate Neligan. Did I get your last name right, Kate?
Yes.
Wonderful. Both Emma and I are really excited for this podcast, and I'm actually going to let Kate introduce herself today. Kate, tell us about who you are.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Let's see. I am a lifelong horsewoman. I started riding when I was a kid, and luckily my mom had loved horses, so she got me into it. And I have rode most of my life with just a short break in my 20s, but I didn't know that horses were healers and teachers until about 6 years ago, when I started basically being an apprentice in equine therapy. And so I am now an Equine-Partnered life and career coach and speaker and author. And I just have really dedicated my life to the power of the human-animal bond and what's possible through that connection and that love and trust between horse and human. I also work with goats, and I am outside of Boulder, Colorado, but I also travel to different ranches, and one in particular, I go to Los Angeles pretty frequently. So that's a little bit about me, my certification and background. I have a master's in spiritual psychology, and I have a certification in equine experiential education as well, but I'm pretty eclectic. I bring in a lot of different teachers and modalities, and the biggest thing I do is I really listen to the horses for what they want to help humans with.
So interesting. That's so cool. And I'm probably jumping way ahead here. But when I was reading about you, Kate, because we haven't met yet in person, one day, who knows, hopefully, I'm like, oh, she's got a master's in spiritual psychology. First off, I mean, really cool. And then I guess, what is it and how does it influence what you do with humans and horses?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So it's a 2-year program in which you do this deep dive pretty much out of your egocentric life into a very heart-centered or soul-centered way of being. And we learn 26 communication skills and 8 counseling strategies. And so all of the class and the curriculum is really set up in these trios where you have a counselor and a client and a neutral observer. And you go through all these different roles. And you really work on your own stuff for 2 years. So for me, I was a studio executive. I was a vice president at a young age, and I was really driven and very type A. And then what happened through that master's program is I really started to think more about what would my life look like if I was being more than doing, and if I was of service to the greater good and humanity rather than just my own egoic desires of money and fame and all that stuff, right? And so during that time, we had a dream project, and my younger inner self was like, I just really want to ride, but I didn't give it to her until right when I graduated because I had grown my self-love. And so then I basically was able to bring all of these skills and tools that I had learned to the horses because I started riding again after a pause there in my 20s. And I was able to really learn how to pair those skills with what the horses naturally bring us as their way of being, and as prey animals and as centered as they can be. And so I just started to listen more to myself and to the horses, and I started to slow down. And then I luckily found this equine therapy situation, and I realized, wow, these two worlds easily go so well together. The way the horses show up and the way the spiritual psychology communication skills are designed to really work us into a different way of being.
That's fantastic. And just even as you're talking, I can just feel my heart smiling a little bit. I'm wondering if there was the aha moment. I'm picturing you standing in the barn, and all of a sudden just, that moment of wow, here I am, and this is what I want to do. Was there a moment like that for you?
Yeah, I think the biggest moment was when I learned about what equine therapy was. So I didn't grow up knowing that this was an option. I rode, I was competitive, and I was always on the back of a horse. I was never on the ground, like many of us. And I was I was leasing this gray Arabian Felici, who I was, head over heels in love with, and her and I were becoming best friends. And I went in to get her one day to ride, and her human told me about what her horses were doing in this equine therapy session with addicts in recovery in California. And I was like, wait, what? The horse just walked over and put its head on someone's heart? The horse did what? And I'm like, as soon as she told me, it was as though like the world stood still. I knew I was listening to something really critical. And I had like this moment where I was like, I need to know more. I have to know more. I need to see this. And so I just was like, when can I volunteer? I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, because it really was one of those pivotal moments in my life where I knew something big was about to happen. And I watched, and, we would joke with the addicts, so like we were all becoming addicted to horses. And not, they were no longer going to be addicted to substances. And for me, I was addicted to the transformation that I watched happen in 2 hours, where they would come in wanting to give up on life, not in their bodies. And after 2 hours, which it took 2 years sometimes at my master's program, these people were leaving smiling, connected, hopeful, wanting to get, to devote and to commit to their healing process. And it was just from the inspiration of being with these horses. So to me, I was sold, I was in. And that was my big moment, was just knowing that however the horses were showing up was something I needed to witness and be a part of.
It sounds like, in its own way, I mean, it obviously was inspiring to you, but it was pulling at your deeper heartstrings in some way. I am curious, and if not, I mean, whatever, that's okay. I might be projecting onto you right now, who knows? But I wonder if this process was healing for you in some way. Like how was it connecting to you? How did it get to that deeper place? Why did it resonate with you so much?
Yeah, thank you. It was, in many ways, like watching these addicts was very humbling, because in college I was alcohol dependent. And I easily could have gone down the path of really addiction on that level. But I had the spiritual background. I have this spiritual psychology background, which really helped me get out of darker places, honestly. So I could relate on some level to the addicts and what they were going through. And so I think that's what hit me most. I decided I didn't want to go that path with my career. I did not necessarily want to stay continuing supporting addiction. I really think that's a great space for therapists, and I'm a coach, and I work with high performers and different type of clients. But at the time, it was really healing to me, because I realized that A, I could have been on that path, and B, I do think we're all addicted to something, which is control. And I actually start my first book that way. And I think a lot of people who are drawn to horses have control issues, because horses help us work them out. And they help us to learn that we can get a lot more with lightness and with timing and touch and feel, especially when we're riding, than from like massively pulling and kicking and force. So they really help us on the riding front, but then on the ground, it's even more powerful when we're eye to eye, and we need a horse to join with us at liberty. And we have no tack, and there's zero control, and it's all about our ways of being and our clarity and our communication. So that's a great question. You just took me a little deeper there, and I don't always share that piece of my story, but yeah, that was it for me. I was like so grateful I never got to that level of being in a rehab center.
Well, hey man, thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's such a gift. And then so you went through this whole process yourself, and you learned so much, and then when you moved on from that kind of part of your learning process, what was the next step that you took towards the rest of your career?
Yeah, that is great. So I realized that I had resistance to doing this work at first, which I think it was really because it was so important and it was such a big deal. And I do have this feeling that when it's our calling, we do get really scared of it, that we do fight and we have some resistance because it's such a big deal and it's so close to us. And we have this, well, what if I succeed? Do I deserve it? Am I worth it? And then what if I fail? This is my biggest heart's desire. This is my calling. And so it's scary either way. And so I spent about a year, and my mentor at the time, we would trail ride, and I'm like, I feel like you're going to stop me. And she's like, no one's stopping you but you. And I just was dabbling in it. And then I finally was just like, I'm just going to go for it. And I started reaching out to those who had been in my spiritual psychology program with me, and they were coming, and I was drawing in really what my background was, my recent background at that time, which was corporate. People in the movie studio world. So my very first professional equine therapy session, or equine coaching, not therapy, but equine coaching, was working with Paramount Pictures. And so I had people over 2 different sessions working through communication with a large movie studio. And I honestly I was at the beginning of my game. I was just learning. I did not have a lot of skills besides what I had watched my mentor do, but we still did it, and we did a great job. And we were working with video game companies also and doing these team buildings, and it was great. And so I dove in, and then I think I realized, okay, this isn't as scary as I thought, and I am better at this than I thought. And so I'm often coaching and teaching, especially other women starting in equine coaching, hey, just start, just play with it and see how you do. Because you might actually find that, you're better at this than you think, you love it, it goes well, you can trust the horses. So just keep taking steps forward and keep learning through experience. So that was a lot of it. And I did have one other pivotal moment, which is my mentor left to go down to the office. And one of the women in the therapy session was, she was struggling with slowing herself down. And then I just asked her to put her hand on her heart and to just take a breath. And she went, oh my God, I never ever thought to do this. And then she said, can I come back here for a private with you? I really want more of this. And then I went, oh, I can do this. That was just in 5 minutes. And I was still volunteering with the addicts in recovery. And then I went, okay, I can do this. Here's someone even asking me for more. So, and it was all just intuitive for me. I was just listening to the horses, listening to my own intuition. Hand on the heart thing wasn't something I even did much of in my life. It just came to me in that moment to offer to her. And now I do a lot more of that, but it's being in the moment, which is where the horses are and where all the magic is, right?
I love that. And I'm curious too. I don't know if all of our listeners would know what you mean by an equine coaching session. I think when we talk about coaches and an equine coach, I think we all imagine, the riding instructor in the middle of the arena with, their boots and their breeches on, and they're calling out to their students. But maybe I'll just kind of get you to back up and explain for our listeners, what does an equine coaching session look like in the context that you're speaking about today?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. So essentially it's personal growth with horses and life coaching with horses. So we are on the ground, we're not mounted or riding, and we are exploring different, essentially soft skills, emotional intelligence skills around building trust, self-care, self-love, working with clear communication, relationship issues, dealing with anxiety and stress. So a lot of the life challenges and issues we bring into the arena, we bring to the horses, and we work through them. So I'm asking questions as a coach. We're coming up with solutions in real time to practice. We might be creating an action plan, but essentially the horses are showing up. People will call them mirrors. I often find that, the horse is just an incredible way they read us so well because they have to, and because of how we've co-evolved with them. And so I think it's more of the horses show up as their own teachers to help us understand things about ourselves that we may or may not like, but then show us ways of being, how they are, either as individuals or in a herd, that we can adopt and find solutions in. So it's really redefining ways of being, I find, that we find with horses.
And we talked about, before we started recording, about why using animal communication in an equine coaching session is so valuable. And what do you mean by animal communication, and what does that bring to your coaching sessions?
Yeah, thanks. Animal communication is the idea, the body of work that animals are communicating with us all the time. And it is about how do we listen to them and how do we connect with them? So most of it is really through mental telepathy, and then they think in pictures, they send pictures. We have different clairs, right? Different intuitive abilities. I'm clairaudient, meaning I can hear information about things. My intuition works that way, and I've honed it. Really, my intuition started in my master's program because they gave us so many exercises to do to grow it. So that's something I like to help my clients with too, is growing intuition. But what essentially it is in the equine coaching space, the horse is actually sharing stuff like, this client needs such and such, or ask that client this, or sometimes they're just they'll say something really direct or specific about like, grow peace, or here's why peace is important, or they'll just bring in, and they're not like these verbose ways of like us telling stories and going on as humans. They're usually very direct and very clear, but very much the horse, because it's stuff I wouldn't know necessarily about the human, and then I'll check it out and they're like, yeah, how did you know that? Or it's incredibly meaningful, some of the words that they'll say. So I find it's important for us to bring into the sessions, because then it's not just our own filter, which, we have our egos and whatnot, and our minds, and we can actually listen to the horse and what they're suggesting is going on, or horse is in the session, so that way we have specific guidance for humans. So I actually started doing these things called horse wisdom readings, and we have a herd of 5 horses and a mini donkey in Colorado, and I'll have people ask a question about their life, something they're struggling with, and then I'll say, which horse do you feel drawn to get an answer from? And I'll go to, let's say, my mare Phoenix, and I will listen to what she's sharing, but I'll also watch her, and she'll start to do things with her body language where she is bringing in metaphor and mirror. So I'm like, okay, what's happening? And of course, projection can always come in, but it helps sometimes actually with the projection. And because there's answers there, and then people see it a different way, and then they also go, oh, well, if the horse told me to do that, I want to do that, right? Versus like, Kate told me to do it, or it's a whole different world where they're like, I want to do this for the horse, right? I want to do this because I have this connection with this horse. And so I find that people are sometimes more willing to change even when they're getting direct feedback from the animal. So this is something, there's courses all over. One of my teachers is up in Canada, but I have teachers all over that I've taken trainings and classes with to really understand how to do this. And a lot of it is through meditation. A lot of it is through the heart. My ability to hear horses turned on Earth Day when I was doing a meditation with horses and just blasting them with love. And I got back to the barn and I put my mare away, and the mare next to her just looked at me and went, I wish you were my mom. And I'm like, did I really just hear that? Like, that was so clear, as if someone was talking right next to me. And then it was like, I could hear all of them starting to talk, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. And it really is just like tuning to a channel on a radio station and being able to actually hear that radio station, whereas before you were listening to a different station, so you're only getting that music, and you just change it to this station, and you're like, oh, okay, now here, or I can sense, or I can feel. And the animal communicator I do workshops with, she actually says that I do more like channeling. So I'm actually like bringing in messages, and because I have 5 incredible horses on the other side, now I often work with them too and try to bring in their guidance for people. So I think there's lots of different layers to this, but ultimately, if people are interested, it's important to get training in it, because you can get validated then. You can practice with other people's animals and be like, So Sparky loves this one specific toy that looks like this, and they're like, how did you know? Here is that toy. And they, you know, and you would have no way of knowing otherwise. So it's really can be validated, and it's really about just growing our skill in it. We all can do it. It's just a matter of like, A, do you believe in it? And B, can you start to practice and get better at it? Just like any skill, like any sport or whatnot.
Well, I love that. There was one key piece that you mentioned as well a little ways back, and it was just about the coevolution of our relationship with horses. And listening to you talk, it sounds like that's a really key piece of what's happening here, is how that's evolved over time. I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit more.
Yes, and this is an area that I've recently been like, I want to study so much more about this, just because the history of horses is big, I think, for people. But ultimately, the way I look at it is they have always been so they've been on the planet longer than us. So I always look at that as they have skills of survival that we can look to, right? Ways of taking care of themselves and each other that actually we can learn from. And they are always looking at the greatest good of the whole herd and not just an individual need. So that's one thing on a herd dynamics is a whole thing that we can learn from. But the other is how they've evolved with us, which is ultimately, if you look back at war and transportation and sport, we're coming to this next level, which to me makes perfect sense that they would be alongside us as teachers, especially spiritual teachers and healers, to help us be better versions of ourselves, because they've always been here to help us. They've always been of service in so many ways, and they're here for themselves too. I do believe that horses are coming here for their own evolution, but it makes so much sense that their higher purpose now would be to help all of us. Really, I was on another podcast and she said, horses are here to help us with ascension. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And so I really believe that they are here to help awaken us and help to move us into this space of really being in our hearts more, because their hearts are so much larger than ours, and really to help us become clear about how we can be better with ourselves, but also with each other, and how we can take care of the earth, right? Because they share the earth with us. So they have that kind of selfish, if you call it, now I'm putting a human word on them really, but like desire to make sure that we can all still survive and live here on this earth. We have to take care of it together. And I find so much that they help reconnect us to nature by being with them, because we're out with them, but also to our true nature, which is our authentic selves, right? And to me, I have found my relationship and connection with horses is so much more powerful when I come from that authentic place, that place of love and surrender and trust and joy, than from my like ego, like I gotta do 3 canter circles today and whatever it is, like my own agenda, which we all bring to horses, and it's okay. But I think there's like, they're asking us to slow down and look at what else is possible with them. So I kind of feel like, in some ways, I feel like I've discovered this gift of who they are and why they're here that I really want to share with people. And I'm not the only one that's discovered it, of course, but like, I want to share that with people. I want to share this heightened purpose of horses with people.
It's interesting you talk about like our authentic self, and I definitely have always felt that while I'm around my horses, I'm much closer to what my authentic self is, and it's interesting. So and this means different things to different people. For me, when I'm talking about my authentic self, I'm talking about not being caught up in, say, outside influences or past learning histories that are influencing my decision making and my self-view, and kind of getting in touch with that really clear, concise view on how I see things and how I feel about things and how I want to, steer the ship, I guess. And when I'm with my horses, because there's no BS with them, I feel so much closer to that. And I'm wondering, Kate, what, like when you talk about your authentic self, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, I love the way you described it. I think it's similar. And I think it was a word that I didn't really know, or the concept I didn't know much of until in my master's program. They kind of promised us that by the end of the 2 years, we would have this full experience of our authentic self. And what they really said was, in many ways, that we would experience ourselves without the ego, which is kind of fascinating because we just have them and we need our egos. But it was, in the end, we have this practicum. So we're in the desert for like a week doing just deep work, like deep work. And, going through, again, all the past stuff, like letting it go. And for me, it was the pure truth of who I am, just as an energy being, that there's an energy going on, that there's a soul essence happening that is greater than just who Kate is, that is, divine perfection and love. And so for me, it was like being able to fully surrender all the stories and all of the ego desires and all these pieces and just be pure presence, pure love, the existence of like, it's like pure bliss, pure health, pure just everything. And it was fascinating because I was in that for a couple of hours, and then I kept the high energy for a couple of weeks. It was hard to drive a car, and they, it's not as easy to do. Like the ego helps us with those kind of basic human functionings, but this was just like what I would call like the divine self, the higher self. And so to me, that's the energy that I feel like the horses are in all the time, unless they have gone through some trauma, or they're starving, or they're hungry, in that moment, and they're like really focused on basic needs. But for the most part, I find that the horses just live from that space of really pure unconditional love. And so we can join them there, and we can get there faster. It's like the door opens and we can be with them in that space. And so to me, it's living without the BS, and the BS is what the horses are so great at. We call them BS detectors, right? Because like you can't really lie to a horse, and you can't be incongruent because they're just like, they'll just tell you right away, right? So my mare just called herself in a session the other day a truth slayer, and I loved that. I had never heard those words before, and I'm like, I can't make that up. So I knew she said it. That's who she is. She's so blunt, and it's like I have to learn a lot about myself being around her, because she really puts me in my place quite frequently, which is good, and I need it. But I mean, man, owning horses is like, it's for the very bravest of us, because they really do bring up so much for us. And I say that about my clients too. They're so brave, because you really have to face yourself on the shadow and the darkness and the challenges and the ego when you're with horses. But the beauty and the opportunity is that we can reach the authentic self faster, and then live from that place, ideally. And life does just get better from that place. It just does. So
do you find that there's certain like horses that are better suited to being part of this type of work? Or like, I'm not necessarily thinking breeds, but are there some that are just like, I guess, humans too, like would be more called to be in relationship with humans in this way?
yeah, I think so. I find, so people always say like, did you train the horses to do this? And I'm like, no, because this is their true nature. This is how horses show up, as service, as loving, as authentic, real, genuine. So there's no training in these horses, but what there is there are horses that I think like this work more than others. They like humans. They're interested in human emotion. They want to be with humans. They want to help humans. I think that some of them are like, they know this is their purpose and their role, and they get excited about it, and so they show up for it. And there are other horses that, they may want to watch more, or they hang back and they hold space, and they provide a different type of service by being there, but they're not necessarily interested in doing the work. And there's kind of different levels of it. Like my mare likes to do more movement-based activities. So she's great, you know, with the halter and with leading and all of that. And then one of the horses I work with is like Black Arabian, and he loves to do more of the shadow work and the healing. So he'll come up to you and really work on your energy system and clear different things going on with you. So I find that they work a little differently the way we would too. So some are more like in the teaching space and some are more in the healing space. And then there are horses who, you know, if they have been through a lot of trauma, because I used to work at a rescue doing this, and one of them was just like, he still had to go through so much of his own healing that A, it wasn't fair to put him in with other humans, and B, he was not, he wasn't great at it because he had his own PTS, and it was not, you know, other people's stress would trigger him. So he wasn't great for it. But then another horse who had been through trauma, you know, he was just so excited to be partnering with humans and doing something different than having to carry people on his back. It was important for him to have a relationship on the ground with someone because he was a racetrack horse. So he had never been used to like meeting someone eye to eye and like having a conversation with them on that level. So I think it does range, but I do my best to assess, because I work at different ranches, like which horses are interested. And also some horses are not interested the day of. So I love having free choice. Horses can go and move out of the way if they want to. They're not forced to do this work because they might be having a bad day like us. Last thing we really want to do is show up fully and help someone if we're really just need time for ourselves, right? So I try to always honor where the horse's emotional state is day of too.
That's so cool. I love hearing about how, just like us, our you know, our horses' personalities, I mean, they might have different things to teach our humans and be more able to show up each day. You know, that's so cool. So it's like we've talked about the spiritual side of things, and then another thing that you're involved in is like the business and marketing end of things. And I know that somehow you kind of marry the two a little bit with your clients, and I would be very interested to hear about how that all kind of works together, because we see them as such different, as on such different planes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yes, and I do feel like I have this very practical side of myself because I used to be an atheist. I was totally a scientist for a long time. I was like, you have to prove it to me. So all of this stuff was like crazy woo-woo. So that's why I can relate to people who are skeptical, because I'm like, I was too for a long time. And I started to have so many experiences I couldn't explain, and then went, okay, something else is going on here. And I feel better in spirituality because it makes me more connected than if it's just me and whatever I want and that's the world. Like that's just a darker place, I think, for most people, because you can feel alone. So, but my background was in corporate marketing, and I've also done nonprofit marketing and startup marketing. And so it was like 20 years of doing marketing for either as a consultant or full-time in corporate. And I realized that a lot of equine practitioners need support with marketing, and either they don't like it, they don't understand it, they don't want to do it, which is all okay. And if we need, horses are expensive, as we all know, and if we want to have sustainability as an equine practitioner in whichever field we're in, as well as really take good care of our horses, because the saddest thing for me is when someone gives up their horse that they love because they can't afford it. And I don't want that to happen ever again if I can help it. So I believe strongly in the fact that if we can learn and practice and do basic marketing and the right marketing for us, and we use marketing as magnetism, right? Not this like hustle, go grab stuff like that. No one wants that energy, but magnetism, the way the horses are magnetic to people, just, you know, people are like, oh, a horse, you know, wherever they are. And we start to hold those energies, and our brand holds those energies, people are going to be drawn to us, right? Like I saw your brand and I'm like, I like this. I like what they're doing. I like what they're about. And so I was drawn to reach out to you guys. Yeah. So, cause like your brand was clear. You had, you know, you had a website that was clear. You guys were it was like, there's a friendship here, there's a kinship, so I could tell your values already. So there's a lot that people can communicate in a very short amount of time through marketing that can draw people to you, right? So that's why I think that I have helped equine practitioners, mostly at this point one-on-one, do 3 or 6 months of getting them started. So all the basics with social media and website and brochures and bios and press and you name it. There's a lot of different categories, but because I worked somewhat recently with 30 vet practices, I worked with people who also, veterinarians don't always want to do marketing too, don't like it. They just want to serve and they want to be there for the animals, and I get it. So I helped them, and I feel like I can relate to the equine practitioners because they're similar in a sense, and they just want to go be with their horses. And so my job is to make it easier, to make it more fun, and to demystify it, make it less scary so that people are willing to do it, because ultimately, to me, it comes down to a brand is just another form of representing who you are, which is important. It's another form of best version of ourselves. So it goes with coaching, and it helps us take better care of our horses, which is like one of my biggest whys, right? Is that our horses get taken care of. So that's how I bring in the marketing, and just having 20 years of experience, it's easy for me to know what to do and how to help people.
It's nice that you understand that why most people, I mean, when you think about, I'm going to get into the horse industry for a living, it's, you know, you're not necessarily taking on a really easy task, so you gotta love it, right? So it's cool that I can hear you already have that heart piece. Like, I understand that these people, they just want to go and be with the horses or help horses or do, you know, do their heart job, and they might not necessarily be great at the business end of things, which I feel like is a classic stereotype for horse people, really. So if there were a couple of things that you feel like are classic mistakes, or maybe something that you feel like pretty standard equestrians could improve on in the business marketing kind of bubble, what might that look like, if you feel comfortable, going into that?
Sure. Yeah. The first that often comes up is assuming people know what it is you do and kind of why you're different. So for instance, Mira asking me, well, what is equine coaching? Let's even just start there, right? And that is something that not everyone knows, and we have to learn how to explain it. So, and then also like, what your why are you different, and why are you doing what you're doing, and being able to communicate that through storytelling. So a lot of times people are just like, well, and like I've seen this a lot even recently through like some of the sales stuff that's going on through emails and whatnot. It's just like, here's my link, buy my product. And I'm like, whoa. Like, you know, it's just like a random person coming up on the street and being like, hey, well, you got, like, let's get married, or let's go on a date, and, you know, like, give me your number. And you're just like, okay, hold on. Do I like you? Do I trust you? So it's growing the like, know, and trust factor. And I do think it's important that people tell their story as a way to get people to truly understand like their why, their heart, what they're about. And that's, you know, we buy from people that we know, like, and trust. And so I think that that's one mistake, is that people just rush a little bit to the call to action without really building the relationship first. And I love helping people storytell. I love pulling out the elements of like that. When before we started recording, I was like, so tell me, how did you guys meet? When would, you know, because I'm like always in that space of like, it's part my coaching self, it's part my marketing self, but it's really driven by curiosity, which is like, I want to hear people's stories. And as obviously you guys do, because you're doing podcasts, to hear people's stories and bring them to the world. So yeah, I think humans are so driven by that. So I think we have to really bring it into our marketing more. And then also, on the flip side of asking for the number too fast or dropping the link too fast, I do find a lot of equine practitioners, they just think like, if they build it, they'll come, and they don't always ask for the referrals or look at where are their referrals. So some of my greatest like the fastest, easiest money and the greatest kind of relationships and joy I've had is come from someone I'm already working with or know who refers to me. And I have like, you know, I do one call and I've signed up a 3-month package. And it really is like asking people for referrals. I remember one day I do marketing and I manifest with the horses. So one day I was just kind of setting my intention and praying to the horses. I said, I would love more referrals. How do we do that? And I just kind of threw it up to them. And within an hour or two, one of my clients was like, hey, I just felt inspired to connect you to a couple of my friends. Two emails, both of them booked with me, you know, and have become clients. And it was just like so fast and so easy. So I like to teach the spiritual principles that we're tying it all in of marketing and getting people to also work with their horses. Because if you're a trainer, in the equestrian space, or if you're some form of educator or coach or therapist, your horses are your partners. So my mare was always my CEO. I always ran my ideas by her. She would be like, yes, and she'd be super into it, or she'd be like, nah. And I would sometimes bring potential clients in front of her too and see if she enjoyed them, or potential partners, people that I would partner and do workshops with. And I would watch her reaction to these people before I did business with them. So I'm a big fan of really involving the horses in our marketing and our business building too, which I find I'm somewhat unique in that regards, because like, A, it can be more fun that way, and B, we don't have to do it alone, but our horses are so wise and they can help us with our business. Why wouldn't we ask them for help, right? So now you guys you can go take something to your horses together when you're riding next and see what they say, see what they show.
I love that. I already had a few things running through my brain where I was like, I totally want to ask my gelding about that.
I would love to know what he says. That'd be great. Yeah. Clear. They're just like, yeah. So.
Well, and it's so neat too, because I think, you know, often we're making so many decisions every day for our horses, and trying to make those decisions from the best place that we can. Sometimes, you know, as with very limited information, or just sorting through the information that we do have and making a decision in their best interest. I love the idea of bringing their voice, however that looks for us, into that decision.
Yeah. And it may just be a feeling like, oh, he likes this, or oh, he doesn't, and maybe you don't get an answer right away, but then you ask again an hour later or the next day. I've done that too, but I always ask them for help. Like if I want more clients, I'm just like, okay, let's call in more clients, and usually within a day or two. And I do it for podcasts too. So I'll say to them, I really want to share more about you guys. Like we need more speaking opportunities. And then usually I'll find a podcast or someone will reach out to me and ask me to interview. So I'm like, it's just neat. I'm like, that's kind of my secret sauce, but that is the biggest thing. All is like, just go ask your horses for what you want, because they want to help us. So
I love that. So now I'm dying to know if the horses brought you to Friends on Horses.
I feel like they did, because I don't remember exactly how it was Nina's interview. That's how I found it on Facebook. But yeah, Nina's such a special person. And so definitely watch that episode, everyone, or listen to that episode. Nina did 2 with you guys, I think, too, right?
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the sports psychology one too. Yeah, so I just think that they know who's more heart-centered in the space, and they kind of direct me that way too. So, so the horses voted for you guys.
I love that so much. That's so much fun. Thank you, horses, for bringing Kate to us. So are you comfortable talking about your upcoming project?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give you just a quick little story on this, but essentially what happened was my mare passed, and I did a sound bath healing ceremony for her. She broke her leg. She was 20. She had obviously had a previous injury I didn't know about. Off the track thoroughbred mare, big red chestnut named Lindsay. And I was getting a sense that she wanted me to train people more. And I was doing it privately, one-on-one. And even when I had her at the rescue, after I rescued her, I was actually certifying under my mentors program at that time. I was doing certification trainings, and it was, again, one-on-one. But when I was at the sound bath for her ceremony, there was a woman there who I didn't know very well. I had just met her, and she goes, "I really feel called to be at your mayor's funeral. Can I come?" And I'm like, "Sure." So she comes, and we're kind of in the process, and out of nowhere she goes, oh my God, I have to share something." I said, "What?" She goes, "You're supposed to train people to do what you do." And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "No, your mayor wants you to do this. You need to do this. This is her legacy. You have to share what it is that she taught you." So most of my training, although I've done a lot of, like, you name it, horsemanship training, animal communication training, equine therapy training, certification, whatnot, most of what I know and most of what I practice comes back to what Lindsay, my mare, taught me. Like, it all comes back to her way of being and what she communicated with me, spending every day with her. So I'm not surprised that this woman brings in, "You got to train people." So because I've had some resistance, like I always do when something's meant to happen, I've waited a little bit, but I've really kind of let things percolate. So I went and got my own certification first in Equine Experiential Education, not because I felt like I had to get a cert, but because the horses, again, sent me there, and I needed to be there to meet different people. But ultimately, over the last couple of years, I've been really honing what is it that the equine space, especially for those in equine therapy and equine coaching and equine assisted learning, what is missing and what do they need? And it really does come down to the spiritual psychology, animal communication, and marketing as three of the major tenets to support new practitioners, or even practitioners that have been doing it for a little while but haven't hit the success they'd like to hit, to be able to come and learn new skills that really, I think, fast track our success and our growth with the horses. So and also who want this kind of spiritual lens that I haven't seen as much of in the horse world. And so I decided to put together a program to train people, and this will be the first time I do it in a group, because I've always done one-on-one privately, but this will be a more public offering and a group program, still small, and we will do it all online and virtual, because this was the year that I really mastered virtual work with horses, having to pivot this year, but then also having an in-person training at the end, or retreat, so people can be together and really practice and connect, and we can make sure that people can do what they say they can do. I'm in that integrity with, I want people to really know that they can do what they've learned, and offer great services out in the world. So this is going to be for anyone from around the world, and I've had clients all over the country come in and want to be certified in this specific thing that is really very much my mare's teaching coming through me, and I work with her on the other side as well. So she will be guiding this, and it's very much her program, and I am just the human that gets to deliver it. So that's what's coming, and excited to share more and give you guys a link to it in the notes for this too.
Wonderful. Very special for you, I bet, to be able to, I mean, you say goodbye to your precious horse, but have give you such a special gift to come out of it with. Yeah. Pretty special.
And I find that our horses, they die in the physical, obviously, but we can still have relationships with them. I feel like they're still very much around us. It's just when we just have to learn how to tap into them. It's another form of animal communication, but really, like, the horses that passed, my first mare, Felici, who passed right before I met Lindsay, she's around me all the time. She sends me signs all the time. And I feel in many ways like she is a guardian angel. And then Lindsay's doing a lot of stuff wherever she is in the universe, but she is definitely still there for me. And I feel her in sessions, and she's still guiding in so many ways. So I'm a big proponent of, like, we don't really die. We just, we have different relationships. And, can I prove any of that? I don't know, but what I will say is, do I feel better? Does it make me work better to know that my mares are right next side to me? Yeah, it does. So why not believe that if it's actually helping you show up in a better version of yourself? So yeah.
For people who this really resonates with, how will they, so we'll put links in our podcast notes, obviously, but where do they find you? Where do they find out more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So the social media is great, being a marketer. Instagram is Kate Neligan Equine Coach, and Facebook, I have a Facebook group called Equine Rockstars. We have over 1,000 members that are passionate about sharing like-minded and like-hearted resources around horses, inspirational stories and videos. So please join us there. My current website is consciousrockstar.com, because Conscious Rockstar is the name for my intuition and also my coaching business, but it will be changing to Kate Neligan or katieneligan.com in the near future. And so, yeah, any of those would be great. And I definitely can travel and do virtual, doing a lot more virtually, which has been great. So bringing the horses to people and doing remote animal communication and healing sessions too. So it's been fun.
Wonderful. Mira, do you have anything else to add?
I feel like that was such a full discussion. It's been so inspiring hearing about you and what you're doing, and excited to learn more about your course in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, guys. Well, I feel like that was, yeah, as Mira said, super inspiring, man. Thanks. Shall we call it? Is that a wrap, Mira?
That's a wrap.
If you want more Friends on Horses, you can find us on Facebook at Friends on Horses Podcast.
Check it out for all the latest and greatest horsey news.
You can find us on the web at friendsonhorsespodcast.com.
Or Instagram at friendsonhorses_podcast.
Like what you hear? Help us quit our hate jobs by supporting Friends on Horses. You can support us by rating our episodes on iTunes.
Becoming an ongoing sponsor through Patreon.
Or simply by spreading the word about our show.
Have some feedback?
We'd love to hear from you.
Contact us via email at friendsonhorses@gmail.com.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.